Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma and Zach Celadonia.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Joe Kuzma, and finally, I'm not by myself. It's been like a good month or so since I've been able to try and get you on here. Zach Celadonia. How the hell you been doing, man?
Good. I think I haven't been on since we reviewed the draft class. I think that was my last episode with you.
Yep.
But it's a shame. I wish we had something to talk about today.
Oh, we've got a lot to talk about. And before we talk about wide receivers, let's talk about guys who cover wide receivers, because we actually had a little bit of news today.
It's a great transition. That's a great
segue.
segue.
I know, you got to love it. I tried my best. This isn't just a hat rack that's here. So just kicking it off with the Pittsburgh Steelers signing Cam Sutton. 1-year veteran minimum deal is reported by Jerry Dulac, Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. And he was already out on the practice field today, too, wearing number 20, as reported by Brooke Pryor from ESPN. And I know there's, what do you want to say? There's people on two different sides of the fence here. We're just going to walk down the fence here in the middle and not get into, because you know what? We know there's some, for lack of better words, there's some drama.
Like a kid who can't swim, you're clinging to the edge of the pool.
Yeah.
Just creeping along the edge of the pool. You don't want to jump in the deep end. You're just creeping along.
Because you know why, man? Do you really think the Steelers are going to sign this guy if he had the legal troubles that everybody understands? There's a lot of people who are like, why should you give this guy another chance? Why is he here? Oh, blah, blah. I mean, the Steelers have gotten rid of people for far less reasons. You think Art Rooney's going to go out there and sign Cam Sutton? You think Mike Tomlin's going to deal with all of this noise? So this is like a classic type of Steelers thing. If you could help our team, this is it. This is your chance. It is the bare bones. No one else is giving you a sniff, because they met with them about a month ago. They got his side of the story. They did all of their, they've got their fixers and people that work within the organization that do the dirty work and do their homework, find out all the details and stuff. So I'm not really interested in like getting the dirt under the fingernails kind of thing and saying whether or not this guy should be here. Hey, let him prove it. If there's no other noise or anything else, I think he could be a tremendous asset to this team, because I didn't want to see him leave last year as it was.
Yeah, a homegrown guy, and you're not going to be able to win in the situation. It's not about winning, but when stuff like this happens and comes up, you're just going to have two sides arguing continuously. It's a lot like politics, where no matter what point you make or what fact you point to, there's going to be arguments on both sides. And I don't know enough about the situation and what did or what did not transpire with Cam Sutton and his girlfriend to be like angry or passionate that much on one side or the other. I don't want to offend anyone and make the accusations seem any smaller than they are, because they're bad. Like, they're bad accusations. If they're all true, they're bad. But the little I think I know, which is next to nothing about the law and how they handle stuff like this, I'd like to believe that he'd either be in jail dealing with some kind of legal process or out of the league if he was proven guilty at this point. And I'm not saying he didn't do it. That's not me excusing that he just didn't do it. So let's move on. But the way I am trying to approach this is very similar to how I approached the Ben Roethlisberger stuff for the better part of like the last 10 years of his career. And I don't want to compare apples to oranges, because you got Browns fans already like jumping at the opportunity to be like, oh, all you Steeler fans are on notice now for making fun of Deshaun Watson. First of all, I'm not going to compare apples to oranges, but 60 women plus making accusations is way different. So, but I'm not going to compare apples to oranges. The truth, I believe, is probably somewhere in the middle, like it usually is, as far as what or what did not happen between him and his girlfriend. The whole running from the cops thing for 3 days, that's just cool. That's cool. Like, if you can be on the run for 3 days, like that, a lot of current criminals can't do that, like, with how social media is in tracking. So more power to you. He's given his homage to Leonardo DiCaprio. Catch me if you can. But on a more serious note, I don't know enough to really give any kind of like, oh my God, they shouldn't have done this opinion, or you're all overreacting kind of opinion. I think you have to let the cards play out and see where we go from here. I agree with your point. We talked about this today in the back rooms, but they met with him on May 8th. Today is June 5th. That tells me for the better part of a month, they were doing their research and talking to Cam Sutton, people close to him, people involved possibly in the situation, legal teams, possibly even authority figures, lawyers, doing their homework to make sure they felt good enough about the situation to bring him in. He's also signed for vet minimum. So heaven forbid if he acts up or does something again, allegedly, or more information comes out that is worse and proven to be true, they can cut him. They can cut him. So
yeah, and lose nothing. Yeah, exactly.
I don't see I do see the point, but I don't want to get into the woods with people about like, oh, you hate women, or like, oh, you're diminishing the fact that he got into a fight with his girlfriend. No, I'm not. It's very serious things, accusations, and if you ever hit a woman, you should be hit with the law book as hard as possible. Like, that's just not something you do. But the fact that the Steelers brought him in and signed him, I'm just gonna sit back and let it play out. I'm not heavy one way or the other. I do recognize and realize the seriousness of the nature of the acts that he allegedly committed and has been accused of. I also recognize I don't think the Steelers would bring him in and sign him if they felt like he was going to be a problem, if that makes sense. You know, they dealt with Ben for as long as they did. He's the franchise quarterback, and that it's a totally different situation. Like I said, I'm not going to compare apples to oranges, but the Steelers have cut guys for weed, for like repeated traffic arrests. Like, so I'm going to trust them in this scenario. And like I said, if it blows up in their face, no skin off their back, aside from looking, bad to certain people and needing to cut him. But they've been through these situations before, and I'm hoping that a majority of it wasn't true. I'm not saying, I'm hoping a majority of it wasn't true. And I'm hoping getting back with the coach who drafted him and is famous for his culture ethics and how he can resonate with players and how players love to play with him, and he develops guys. I'm hoping that Mike Tomlin can have his finger on the pulse of the situation. And I agree. It was the cornerback room. I saw people saying, like, couldn't we do better? How? Who else was out there besides, I think Stephon Gilmore is out there, but he's like 35. He's old. And there's no telling how good he is anymore. There were no free agent corners out there just sitting, waiting to be picked up. It's one of the most important spots in football. And the Steelers were in a decent spot with Joey Porter and Dante Jackson. I think Joey Porter has all the makings of being possibly a top 5 corner. But Dante Jackson, solid starter. I'm excited that he seems revitalized, and he's not as bad as some people make him out to be. I think he's very starter capable. But behind them, you had nobody. Oh, Darius Rush. Oh, this guy. Oh, dude, that's so hypothetical. And it's no knock on guys like Darius Rush or Corey Trice. Like, I've been that fan before. Like, that is like, oh, you're discounting so-and-so. I'm not discounting him. I'm saying the cornerback room was in a spot where we're one injury away from having our hands tied behind our back. And now we have at least 3 good to solid starters with Porter, Jackson, and Sutton to deploy instead of just banking on Corey Trice or Darius Rush working out. I'm not saying I'm a Steeler fan. I want them to be good. Ideally, next year, the secondary is Joey Porter Jr., Corey Trice, and Darius Rush. Like, that'd be the ideal secondary next year. Everybody works out. Everybody's good. But you can't operate under those assumptions. You have to prepare for everything. So I hesitate saying this, but I'm on board with the signing based off of what I know and don't know.
I'm with it just based on you trust the team. I mean, like I said, the team, he's in a pretrial diversion program, or he had a accusation or allegations of domestic battery. So this was trying to read this, because what happens is you get the headline and the whatever was out for his arrest. It's tough for me to even talk about this because it's just so flimsy of information. It's just so vague. You had the kind of clickbait hot shot headline that said, hey, football player in trouble. And then you heard nothing else about it. And then everything other thing that you read about it is, well, there's this or there's that. And all I could say is that he could be still punishable by the NFL. Who knows? But apparently the Steelers, they've at least done their homework. Exactly. This isn't anything like Ben or Deshaun Watson. We should not make any it's not competition. You know what I mean? Somebody does something wrong. They did something wrong. The Steelers have a zero tolerance policy against domestic violence. So obviously they spoke with them. They got all the sides of the story, and now he's on the team. The rest of it, you know, I'm willing to just put that. We used to have the one corner that was Trey that was on here that would talk and said spaceships don't have rear view mirrors. You just move straight ahead, right? And the truth of the matter is you've got he's not even 30 years old yet. He's 28 or 29 years old. Homegrown Steelers player that's capable of playing anywhere on the field. That's a boundary corner, slot corner that they desperately need, safety.
Just got a big contract last year. And yeah, he'll be a slot corner for us. That's why he partially struggled in Detroit, was because they were counting on him to be cornerback 1, fringe 2 on the outside. Sutton rarely did that for the Steelers. Sure, he'd be announced on TV as the starting corner, but he primarily would play inside or bump back to a dime position or safety. That is his forte and his bread and butter. That's where he shines. He can play outside, but you want him in the slot, which with Joey Porter Jr. and Dante Jackson, that's where he's going to play, presumably.
Yeah, you're not going to rely on like Beanie Bishop or somebody like that. But
I like Beanie Bishop. I do. I like my Beanie Bishop. But like, it's like you're banking on. I hate that I can't stop. I'm just like everybody else. But ideally, Beanie Bishop is the next Mike Hilton. But that's a lot to ask of him.
That's a lot to ask of an undrafted guy. And then you mentioned like guys that were, Darius Rush, third team already in just like his second year in the league or 1 year in the league. Technically, when
he was a Doran Grant situation, a throwback for Steeler fans. Duran Grant was a fourth-round pick back during the Bud Dupree draft, and fourth-round pick out of Ohio State, didn't make the team coming out of camp, which is really unheard of for a guy picked in the top 5 rounds, I'll say. Usually your top 5-round rookies make the team. He didn't. Practice squad bump back and forth. Darius Rush, I believe, was a 3rd or 4th-round pick, and he bumped on the Chiefs, Colts, and we ended up with him. So the talent evaluation is like encouraging, but you don't want to count on him just being some kind of big-time contributor. If he is, great.
And Corey Trice missed all of last year and was a 7th-round pick.
Yep.
But I digress. We have wide receivers to talk about. And that's been the biggest thing. We've been trying to get on this topic. We're almost just veered completely into DBs. We'll still talk about that some more later. But you got a large piece of this now, because if we had done this before today, what do you say about the defensive backs? Oh, they got Dante Jackson. You have Joey Porter Jr. already. Oh, now you've got, a large piece of this would have been who's the slot corner. So now they may have this figured out, provided Sutton doesn't have any further legal issues or anything like that. But I digress. We're on to the wide receivers and how desperately do the Steelers need another wide receiver. Well, there's a lot of different ways of looking at this. And the very first of those is, who do we have now? We being the Pittsburgh Steelers. Obviously not me and you. We do not run the team, but collectively we like to speak in that sort of manner. So we can tell you who we're not going to talk about probably. Let's look at the bottom end of this roster before we get to more of the top. I guess Quez Watkins, I almost want to throw into not talking a whole lot about. Guy had a big drop, in the Super Bowl or playoffs or whatever, with more than one with the Philadelphia Eagles.
He would be a classic. He'd be a classic Justin Hunter situation where you can talk yourself into being excited about it. He's got positives to his game. He's an NFL player, but I've learned by now not to put too much stock into these dudes who are retreads and, he does this well. He's doing well in camp in this aspect. Great. But I don't have a whole lot of confidence in Quez Watkins. If he can prove me wrong, more power to him.
Yeah. I was going to say Justin Hunter, 6'4", though. 6'4", 203 as far as size concerned.
Yeah, that's why he stuck me in.
Guy. 6. Justin Hunter got killed by Ben Roethlisberger. If you remember, he popped his shoulder diving for a ball, and that's the last we heard of him, unfortunately. And it took him like 2 years to get to that spot. There's some other guys at the bottom of this roster that are much, much the same. Not Deuce Watts, unfortunately. Let me see who else was on this transaction.
Scotty Miller.
Well, Jeray Jenkins was just signed as
You're
well.
going way low. I got you.
Well, Deuce Watts is pretty far down there too.
Yeah.
Jeray Jenkins. Let's see. You still have
People are probably like, who the hell is Deuce Watts?
Yeah, Deuce Watts out of Tulane. That's all the more you need to know about him. I mean, I hate to be ignorant or rude about but if we're trying to keep the show under 2 hours, like how much more are we gonna?
You have to. I see myself and a lot of fans that want to like comment on what I say or ask me like, oh, don't you think like Quez Watkins or Scotty Miller or Van Jefferson can be good? Not really, dude. I am all for the good story, and I'm aware as anybody as their stats and when they did well here and there. There's a reason why they're viewed as bottom of the barrel guys. They've had their chances and opportunities, and there's an occasional success story and a redemption story that captures the hearts of America, but I'm not counting on that in this receiver group with these lower name guys. Pickens, 100%. Roman Wilson, but Calvin Austin even to an extent. But these guys that are like retreads and are blips on the radar as far as NFL news is concerned. No, dude, I'm not gonna bank on that. It isn't personal. I'm not wishing ill upon the receiver, but get real. We all got to wake up sometime.
Yeah, I'm with you all the way on that. And I know there's a lot of people that are upset. Oh, they got rid of Deontay Johnson. And what are you really going to do here? I mean, this is where we're really at, is we're analyzing, like, who's your top three? Okay, easily. George Pickens, is he going to be relied upon as your wide receiver one?
Currently.
It looks like it currently, unless they get somebody that's above that level, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. You've got who's next up? Probably Calvin Austin and Roman.
If you're the Steelers, the Steelers thing is to go with Calvin Austin because he's the senior guy, even though it's crazy talking about him that way. But Roman Wilson, and I said this to you in text already, but to fill everybody in who's listening, Roman Wilson is the two. He's the most skilled, most talented, best receiver on the roster outside of George Pickens. It is very Steelers-like, though, at least old Steelers, pre-Omar Khan in particular, to drag their feet and make the guy earn it and maybe roll him out as the 3-4 leading into the season. I can see a reality where if we don't get anybody else, they announce like Pickens, Van Jefferson, and Calvin Austin as the starters with sprinkling in Roman Wilson. And then by week like 4 or 5, Roman Wilson is in the starting lineup. I don't want that. I think Roman Wilson is already ready to be the two based off of the room right now. But I can see them operating in that fashion, making him wait a little bit and bringing him along slower. However, I will say this. Roman Wilson, a big part of his game, which sounds funny out loud, but he's really good and really willing in blocking. And the Steelers value that, so maybe he'll get out there sooner than the average rookie has shown to get out there for the Steelers.
Well, that was my point, too. And with Arthur Smith coming in, and I had the whole show last week about tight ends. You might see more tight ends. So I didn't get to pull up formation numbers. Maybe I'll find some here. It's like, how often will there be 3 and 4 wide receiver sets? We're more than likely going to see more tight ends on the field, maybe 2 tight end sets where you only got 2 wide receivers on the field. And maybe you're not even throwing the Roman Wilson to even start relying on him or his hands or route running or whatever else. You're just going to bring him out there like you'd bring Miles Boykin out. And everybody knew, and their brother knew, if you saw 13 on the field, it's going to be a run play. I mean, it was pretty obvious to me. They threw it to him a few times to scare him off. Now, where that changes here, of course, is 4.39 40-yard dash with Roman Wilson and a 4.32 with Calvin Austin. Now, Calvin Austin might get pushed around a little easier, I think, but you look at what Roman Wilson did in Michigan and how they're more of cold weather, run the football, kind of mentality there. It's the same thing that Jim Harbaugh is bringing now down, I almost said San Diego, but Los Angeles now with the Chargers and trying to beef up an offensive line, get some backs there and stuff like that. So you've got a willing blocker that's out there. So you at least if you're going to get into that make them earn it in inexperienced type role, maybe one of these other guys that are sitting here as a veteran, like you already mentioned, Van Jefferson or Scotty Miller. Van Jefferson's 6'1", Scotty Miller's 5'9". None of these guys are like, come in with being 6'4", 6'5" type guys that are sitting here on the bench. You got Diz Fitzpatrick, who's been on the practice squad off and on. Denzel Mims probably comes closest to this, a former, second-round pick of the Jets.
Denzel Mims is classic guy Flash would get excited about like 5 years ago, being a former second-round pick. He highly regarded. I remember seeing him in like Daniel Jeremiah and Bucky Brooks' top 5 wide receivers, but he can't stay healthy. He can't get on the field. I forget Denzel Mims is on the team like every other day.
Hey, Marquez Callaway fits into that too. Guys that are
Him too,
6'2",
yeah.
6'3" in size. Van Jefferson's only 6'1". He's probably the most seasoned of all of them. And if you're going to roll with that guy as a 2 or a 3, I don't think it's going to be that bad, because the one point I wanted to make sure that I threw out here that kind of glossed over maybe in the tight end show, and I was talking to you about offline, is how involved may Pat Freiermuth or Darnell Washington be? Or, hey, I did an article over at steelcityunderground.com today too. I have a stat for you.
I wore this for you so you didn't think I forgot about Freiermuth.
Yeah, I think a lot of people forget about Freiermuth, and rightfully so. You know, he missed 5 games last year. He was in and out of a few others, concussions, injuries. His numbers took a hit. His yards per reception were down. Only two touchdowns last year. He only had 2 the year before, but he had almost about 800 yards receiving, which is on par. He had about 60 balls caught in his rookie year. Second year last year, he was down to like 30 something. He was like 4th or 5th on a team that used 3 different quarterbacks. But Michael Pruitt, 6'2", 245 pounds, 32-year-old player that's been with Arthur Smith all over the place, and in the last 3 years under Arthur Smith, this guy,
Loved him coming out of school. Yeah, I think he ran a 4.3 at the combine. I was like, I'm sold on this guy.
46 games. You know, that's a good point too. I'll look up his 40 time here real quick. But here's the thing. He doesn't get a whole lot of action that comes his way. He's going to be like player coach. This is what Coach Smith wants us to do. Maybe if he makes this team, he sticks to this team beyond training camp because they want to use multiple tight ends, because you got a bowling ball of a hybrid, an H-back type of Connor Hayward, of course. But this guy, 46 games, 39 catches. And then you realize that 8 of those were touchdowns, the other 26, all but 5 of the other catches that weren't touchdowns, all went for a first down. So he gets to where the sticks are and he converts. And that's all he does. Or he shows up in the red zone a few times a year. And that's all you need when you're that far down the depth chart. So how important is this wide receiver 2 spot, maybe, as you're trying to get inexperienced guys in the mix, right? Hold on. I was trying to get my train of thought here. Do they need more wide receivers based on this if they're going to use more tight ends? Can they afford to, as you said, ease in Roman Wilson, maybe get more experience with Calvin Austin? Obviously, they pulled George Pickens off the field. We can't talk about him blocking. He came out there and said he didn't want to get hurt last year. So it's a little maybe worrisome, but you might have some willing bodies. But we're already talking about those 3 right there with Pickens, Austin, Wilson. And then you got Cordarrelle Patterson. Is he a running back or wide receiver or both? Maybe just a kick returner. So how many guys did they keep along all of what we said? It's just like there's a bunch of kind of mid-tier kind of guys. Do they need more than that in order to run the football or effectively run play action? Maybe get the tight ends or backs more involved in this system, because let's put it this way. Off and on, you had some superstars with Arthur Smith here or there, like, you know, to draft Drake London, but can you name somebody else that was out there? Kelvin Ridley got suspended, of course, so you can't name him.
AJ Brown.
AJ Brown. AJ Brown. Well, who else was there? AJ Brown. Eventually got Corey Davis to do something, I think, and then that got him some money.
Yeah, Corey Davis got him a big contract.
Yeah, but Corey Davis wasn't Corey Davis. Corey Davis was a bust at that point. So maybe
and then Arthur Smith took over.
Yeah, then George Pickens maybe is wide receiver 1. Maybe you see something more out of Calvin Austin, or the 2 guys that can run a little over a 4.3 40.
I would love to see more out of Calvin Austin. I think I'm more famous than I am frequently, which isn't at all. But I remember saying on this show that I picked the most excited I was about a draft pick that year was Calvin Austin over George Pickens. I thought he was a steal in the draft, and I still like what he offers as a player. I think last year he kind of suffered from the quarterback situation, the offensive coordinator situation, and I want to give him some benefit of the doubt, but not too much to be naive. The NFL is not for long. And I don't want to speak in cliches this whole time, but we've already spoken about this, and we disagree, but not fully, because you may not think we don't need one, if I understand that correctly. But as far as the Steelers wanting to acquire one, it's pretty clear they do, to me. And I think that they should try like hell to get another one because Arthur Smith, and I'm excited for him. I think he's a better coordinator than a head coach. I think he's a smart offensive coordinator. He proved that with the Titans. I mean, he took Ryan Tannehill to the AFC Championship game. And I since we got him as our offensive coordinator, I've been on the front lines talking about how, no, this can work. He knows what he's doing. I like the fit. It'll work. But he's not bigger than the NFL. It's a passing league right now. And yeah, you can gear your offense towards run heavy, but if you have the ability to, if you have the option to get a really good wide receiver opposite of the one you have right now, why not do it? And I've broken it down into bullet points as to why I think it should, can, and will happen. And I've been wrong plenty of times. But because of the way the Steelers have dropped these breadcrumbs for me and everybody else is why I feel like something's going to happen. It might not be my dream scenario, but I think somebody is going to be brought in here to be a contributing starting wide receiver. And the maximum potential of that is like a guy like Brandon Ayuk, DK Metcalf, Deebo Samuel, Cortland Sutton. The bottom is like Michael Thomas, Tyler Lockett. Tyler Lockett is good still, but my points are, I should say, number one, money. We have enough money to spend. I know we got 18-ish, 19-ish in cap space. We normally operate under like 10 to 12. So they have more than usual standards to bring a guy in. And the cap isn't easy to understand, but with that kind of space, they can do almost whatever they want. They can sign a guy who's really expensive, like Ayuk or Deebo or DK, and get him in the fold and have him paid and worry about what they're going to pay him going forward down the line. That's a subcategory of this, is how serious they want to be in 2025 and how they view themselves this year in 2025. Number two is the Highsmith restructure. So many people, myself included, it slips my mind. Highsmith's contract was restructured right before the draft or the day of round one, and they cleared up about $7 million in cap space. And that got people like me excited, thinking, oh, this is it. We're going to make a move for a receiver.
Yeah.
Hasn't happened yet, but I was met with a lot of comments telling me, oh, that's Najee Harris's fifth-year option. Didn't pick it up.
No, and that's just dumb because that doesn't come on the books till next year anyways. So,
well, people are dumb.
I mean, you can carry it over, but why would they do that now? I think you're right, because we were all like gung-ho and over Brandon Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk is coming, and then it didn't happen, but it was also a very wide receiver heavy draft, and there's a lot of teams sniffing around. And, we could talk a little bit more about the actual targets, but you're absolutely right. The breadcrumbs are there. And it wasn't just that. We had Bryant McFadden, friend of the show.
Oh my God, dude, don't remind me. Oh, dude,
yeah,
Bryant.
he left that out there. He left that out there.
Still not talking to him.
Why?
Because he said that shit and we didn't get anybody at the time, man. I was so excited.
Like seven, did he say
he
like
did the eye emojis and everything, dude?
17, number 17, like he was showing that, and we're like, oh yeah, this is gonna be, Cortland Sutton and somebody that's reuniting.
But you know what? I'll to defend BMAC slightly, I will say there has been headlines that have come out recently that the Steelers thought they had something done with the 49ers. There isn't enough detail in these articles that are signaling out whether it was Ayuk or Deebo. But people can Google it. You can look it up yourself on Twitter. There is a headline out there, or headlines, I should say, that the Steelers thought they might have had a deal done with the 49ers during night 2 of the draft, and nothing happened. So we'll leave that as it may for now. Back to my list. Number 3, I have Jefferson, Watkins, etc., all those guys, Scotty Miller. I briefly mentioned this before, but give me a break, dude. I mean, like, I'm all for success stories, but banking on them being good is. You said to me in text the other day, they're not going to get many targets. So no kidding, because they're not good. and that's being really blunt and just as short and to the point. But I don't have a problem with them not getting targets because they shouldn't warrant it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I was
only got like 3 more here.
I know. I was going to throw it in there is because of the reason you said, getting all geeked up over some of these guys and then being disappointed. Who couldn't have been more geeked up about Allen Robinson coming in last year? And what did he do?
Yeah, I've done it enough times, dude. I mean, Robinson was a shell of himself last year, and I even capped myself last year with the excitement about him, thinking maybe he'll be. Allen Robinson made like 3 good plays for us last year. They were first downs in crucial games, and we paid nothing to get him. But still, though, that I've learned time and time again, there's a reason why guys are available. Yeah, you can find a diamond in the rough. You can really hit on a guy trying to prove himself, but it's more unlikely than not. And number 6 or 5, whatever, the Steelers have done this, not me. The Steelers have illustrated this. They're known. There's reports out there. They've called about guys like Debo, Brandon Ayuk, DK Metcalf, Cortland Sutton. They've either been told no or to wait until June 1st. I don't understand really everything about June 1st. I think if I had to just assume, it's the teams like the Seahawks and the Niners save money on these guys if they trade them after June 1st. I don't know how else.
Yeah, there's
it makes sense.
Well, it has to deal with some roster bonuses. That's the reason why the cuts happen with like a post.
Yeah, so
1st.
money.
But the other half of that is the compensatory formula. It kicks in. Now, if you sign any free agents after June 1st, it doesn't penalize you if you end up giving. That's why Odell Beckham Jr. signed
What
later
about a trade?
last year. Trades aren't affected the same way, I think, because that contract would happen. It's the other way around. You know what I mean? So, but there's money that's owed to these players, and there's like a pre and post June 1st deadline that's associated with those type of roster bonuses. So if somebody's playing chicken on, well, we're not going to take that trade, we're going to make like San Francisco eat. This is completely hypothetical, by the way, but we're going to make them eat
right now, yeah.
$8 million, so we don't have to pay it. And a lot of times those bonuses are already. They might be built in, or it depends on if it's a roster bonus, because obviously if it's a signing bonus, then that's already part of blah, 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 cap hits and things that the previous team, Russell Wilson, great example of this.
Yeah, I was just thinking
contract.
that. Yeah.
So
and my final point really is just Khan and company. I mean, I hate when people pull out their credentials. Shout out Mikey and Big Bob. I hate when they're like, oh, I've been watching for 50 years. I've been a fan for this long. I've never seen the Steelers this aggressive. In trades and in free agency,
Absolutely.
It's just not something I'm used to. And I'm so excited about it. And there's so many examples I can point to, but I'll point to the most important ones. First of all, Patrick Queen. The Steelers have never in my life gone out and signed the top free agent, an expensive one. I mean, because there is somebody they brought in, a top free agent, expensive one, and brought him in to be an immediate starter. Patrick Queen, I had older fans tell me that this is the biggest free agent signing we've done since James Ferrier. Ironically, also a linebacker, but
yeah.
Even though the morning of, I was looking at the free, you know how free agency goes. You're so excited. You're looking at everything. I tweeted the morning of, I was like, it has to be either Patrick Queen or Willie Gay for the Steelers. Otherwise, they're just rolling with their group. So I don't even feel like confident enough to be like, oh, I called that, because it still was a shock to me to see it come through that we signed Patrick Queen for what we got him for. Other examples are trading up for Broderick Jones, trading away Chase Claypool, and calling about the wide receivers that we have. You've heard, oh, Steelers have expressed interest. They've expressed interest in Drake Kirkpatrick, or like there's been stories of them, Tyrann Mathieu. But the fact that it's factual that they called about these receivers to check in and see. I have mind to believe that they called about Justin Jefferson, because apparently there were several teams that did it. Antonio Brown alluded to it, but it could have just been hey, what's he going to cost? All right, bye. But they're looking. They're looking. If they don't get anybody, it's not going to be for lack of trying. And finally, it's kind of just like a cherry on top, but even last year you saw signs of this, because Isaac Sumalo was viewed as the best guard, or the second best guard on the market. That contract was kind of like, oh man, we're moving here. We're trying to make moves. And I didn't even mention the quarterback thing. Like, yeah, they were both cheap, but this new age of the Steelers, yeah, there's still some principles and laws and rules like being, adopted from Kevin Colbert. Like Omar Khan was basically his protege and his apprentice, but he's adding his own new age flair and trying to help the Steelers not let the NFL pass them by, which a lot of teams like the Giants, it's a great example. The Giants, some teams are just letting the NFL pass them by. The Steelers aren't letting that happen. So if they don't get anybody, it's honestly, I hate saying likely, because I do think because of all these facts, it's like a 60-40 thing. I think it's more likely they get a guy, but there's a very real chance they don't, because they're just going to be told no too many times, or they're going to be told to offer more, and they're not going to want to do that. Which I appreciate about Omar Khan and the Steelers. I'd be willing to give up quite a bit for a guy like Brandon Ayuk, DK, Metcalf to an extent, but guys like Debo, Cortland Sutton, Tyler Lockett, I'm a little more like, you could probably get him for a third and maybe a future fifth, or Debo maybe even a fourth, because he's older and expensive in the way he plays. So
Yeah.
it's not going to happen overnight. I did get really excited about the June 1st deadline, but I think it's a like you said, chicken. That's a very real thing that happens in these meetings, and especially Omar Khan. As much as we love it, he's built up a reputation now of like taking teams for a ride.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah, they don't want to be made the fool, you know. So hey, you missed probably one of the bigger ones. I mean, we're talking wide receivers. There was the Allen Robinson trade, and he got the Rams to pay and pony up for a lot. But Deontay Johnson is gone. You know what I mean? It was just like, yo, adios. So, you know, this is a whole new way of operating with this team. And that's the reason why it gives us some maybe insight into they're sniffing around. Maybe they don't feel 100% comfortable. I know you and I don't necessarily, because I alluded to this being a lot like Hines Ward was getting old around 2011, 2012, and you just didn't really know. Okay, Antonio Brown made a Pro Bowl as a kick returner, but was he going to be a next wide receiver coming up? You had Mike Wallace. You weren't going to be able to afford to keep him. You had Emmanuel Sanders. You didn't know who he was yet because his foot was and ankle was always messed up, and he finally got out there. But everything that you said, the thing that makes me hesitant, there's two pieces that go together here, so we'll try and keep them hopefully separated. The very first part, let's talk about this exploding wide receiver market and how these guys are making as much as some quarterbacks or more now, and they're being viewed maybe almost as high, maybe even more precious to some rosters that are being built, the wide receiver position that is, than edge rushers. They're becoming like the second highest paid players. In some cases, some of these teams are paying multiple guys in excess of $20 million. I was trying to remember all of them.
Damn right. This is the receivers' time to shine, baby.
What? You got the Dolphins with Tyreek Hill, who's already sniffing around for more money, with Jalen Waddle.
Oh, yeah. Tyreek Hill today talking about how, like, me being selfish isn't going to help the team. I was really quick to tag Old Takes Exposed. You wait 4 weeks, and he's going to be wanting a bigger deal. Like, he's saying all the right stuff, but Tyreek Hill is going to demand more money, especially after Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and CeeDee Lamb and Brandon Ayuk all haven't done their deals yet.
I know.
I think T. Higgins and Ayuk are a level below Jamar Chase and CeeDee Lamb.
Oh, of course.
But they're still going to, I think Ayuk and, who's the other guy I said? Ayuk and Higgins, T. Higgins, they're going to get Amon-Ra St. Brown like type deals. But I said that, dude. I said we have the money. We are able to do this because our quarterbacks are so cheap, and they could be gone next year. It could be here.
Yeah, that's where I'm headed. It
depends how much they think this team is ready to go. Like, if they could, let me ask you this: if they can get Brandon Ayuk, back the truck up for him, and win the Super Bowl this year, and then lose Russ and Fields next year, would you do that?
Oh, that's so tough.
Yes, you would.
It's like a Rams. It's a chip. How can you say no? It's like, okay, if it's guaranteed, but nothing's guaranteed, then you have to rebuild it next year.
Yeah.
But
And that's why it's a super hypothetical. But that's what I think is like, when you have cheap quarterbacks, this is what you can do. Even though we're in a really weird zone here with, like, they could both be gone. I don't think Fields. I'm doubling down on the fact that Fields will be extended, but they could both be gone next year.
I'm not into Fields.
You're a fake Ohio State fan.
I don't want them. It's not fake. It depends what they pay them, but
that's what I mean. It's gonna be like a 2-3 year for like 15 million. Like because they gotta have somebody next year.
Okay, that's fine.
They're not gonna break them off.
But then you break off a little bit of these breadcrumbs. But that's gonna be such a tough sell. Well, before I get to that,
they would have given him his 5th year option if they were gonna give him a lot of money. They're gonna sign him for a cheap, like, prove it.
Well,
backup / fringe starter deal.
It's the same reason they give Najee. I think Najee would have been okay, but it's guaranteed money, right? It was $25 million for Justin Fields, guaranteed. 5th year option is guaranteed that very first day. Yeah, no.
I like him rather a good bit, and I was vocal about that before he was even here. Before we got Russell Wilson, I was like, I want Justin Fields, but not for the 5th year option, and not for a 1st or 2nd. I got my wish so far.
Who's all of these guys? It's on my brain. I don't want to forget it. You got Stephon Diggs and Nico Collins, right? And then
Waddle.
Waddle and Hill. There's 5 teams that have got these like kind of mega contracts. Hold on.
Chase and Higgins eventually here
will be there. Yes.
DK and Lockett might make a good bit. Debo and Ayuk.
Titans, Hopkins and Ridley.
Yeah.
And then I'm trying to look around. Who else is our Seahawks? Maybe Lockett.
I said
Metcalf,
DK and Tyler. He's got his deal currently. Tyler Lockett's always made a good bit.
Eagles, AJ Brown and
thank you.
Devontae Smith, right?
Yeah,
I think
they're both broken off.
Yeah, and of course you mentioned all the guys that are still waiting in line to get that money too, like CeeDee Lamb. He will. Jamar Chase will. T. Higgins might have to wait. He might just have to play under the tag. Still a healthy number there. It just keeps climbing.
The Bears are investing a lot with DJ Moore, and Keenan Allen makes a good chunk of change too. So their top 2 guys make a good bit. With Roma Dunze's on a first-round contract, so that's not cheap, but yeah.
It just goes to show you just how big this is blowing up. And the reason I'm bringing up the pairs of wide receivers is you've got George Pickens entering his 3rd year. So he's under a rookie contract 1 more year. And then damn well next year, whether there's another guy here that's making 20 to 30 million or not, George Pickens is going to be like, where's my money? It's going to happen. These wide receivers are all defense. Yeah.
George Pickens, the receiver, he's going to make something about himself.
Oh, come on, man. I thought you were serious for a second.
And what money? Dude, I know. Yeah. I've been saying I really like George Pickens, and I get so annoyed that I have to always preference it this way and put out the disclaimers. I think George Pickens is him. I think he's top 5 potential. But you can't ignore his antics and how he acts and his diva mentality. I would be stunned if he was just a lifelong Steeler. We might get him for another contract. I was going to say or 2, but he's going to want a lot of money, especially because with the quarterback debacle that we've had since Ben retired, he's still put up numbers. Like, he's still shown that he can be a really good wide receiver. So if I'm his agent, I'm like, I don't care that I haven't been.
Oh, they're licking their chops right now because there's guys out there that haven't. You're going to tell me Waddle's more valuable than Pickens at this point? Or
exactly. Yeah. If I'm his agent, if I'm him, I'm like, I'm better than Jalen Waddle. I think Waddle's great, but Pickens at his peak can be a top 5 guy. So, and I joked about Deontay and him as a unit for the longest time. Not the longest time, but this past season, either one of them could be gone at any second, and then Deontay was gone at any second. Like, they don't do anything illegal off the field. They're not bad dudes, but they are true and blue wide receiver divas. And I would hope Pickens would be able to be re-signed and stay, but I don't have that much confidence that he will be here much longer than a few more years. That's just how I feel. I do really like him, and I think he's phenomenal. That's obvious, but I don't want to use the fact, we might have to pay him as a reason to not pay a guy like Ayuk or somebody else to just keep money for George Pickens.
Well, that's kind of my point is if they go get somebody else, does it make it more difficult to sign the next guy? And that doesn't just mean wide receiver and mean George Pickens. Yeah, it doesn't just mean George Pickens. Let me take a look here because we were talking about the salary cap, right? And overthecap.com. Right now, this is the current Steelers salary cap 2024. Not sure Fatanu's already on here. Okay, so I think most of the rookies are signed and listed on this list. I think they're accounted for. There's 16.
Damn, Cole Holcomb makes a lot of money.
Oh,
dude.
I know.
Shit.
It's gonna make him so. It's gonna make him so expendable. Especially
he started to look good before. I like Cole. He started to really look like we paid for before he got hurt, dude. But
it's you know what? Let's look at that real quick. I mean, there's places that you could look under the couch cushions and find some more money. But I mean, his dead money, there's not a lot really. The cap savings this year, 4.3, next year is 6 million. It's not a terrible amount of money.
Oh yeah. I guess we just don't have that many guys making like a truckload.
Well, when you go a little further ahead and you go into 2025, now there's only 38 names that are on this list and you have almost $80 million. But are you going to spread that around? Are you going to bring Cam Hayward back next year? Are you going to bring Pat Freiermuth and Najee Harris back? They're entering contract years. George Pickens is going to enter a contract year. So you got to pick and choose how you're going to divvy up some of that money. So of course they could have the money for some of these other targets and some of these other players, but you got to think about some of these other extensions that are there. And there's only like the 38 guys. I'm trying to see who else is part of this free agency list. Let's see. I was going to look at the Steelers list for next year, 2025. Bear with me for a second because this, unfortunately, over the cap, like they have great information on this website, but it takes a second to load. Okay, so free agents, potential free agents: Cam Hayward, James Daniels, Dante Jackson, Justin Fields, Nate Herbig, Landon Roberts, Najee Harris, DeMonte Casey. I don't know why Zach Frazier. He's
Cam
just not
Hayward,
there yet.
James
Pat
Daniels,
Freiermuth,
please stay.
Russell
Justin
Wilson,
Fields,
possibly.
please stay.
Yeah,
Freiermuth. I'm not really that sold on anybody else here, pal.
Yeah, I know exactly. But how much are you going to give some of these guys? Najee, $6-7 million. Is there a bonus? Is that on the cap space now, or do you kick that can down the road like teams like the Cleveland Browns do with all?
I hope Najee stays. I hope Najee stays. I think he will. I hope Najee stays. I like him for what he is, even though the Warren discourse has gone out of control. I love Jaylen Warren too, but Najee's good at what he does. It's a shame. It's like a double-edged sword that Warren's as good as he is, because I really enjoy it and he's so fun to watch. But it's like every time he rips off a good play, here come the Najee haters. Like, oh, this is why you start.
And he'll be a year off too from a contract too. So what? He's entering year 3 also. So that leaves you with the potential targets and how much do guys like? Why does Brandon Ayuk's name come up as often as we say? Why is his name part of that conversation? Well, more or less, it's because we know he's demanding a new contract. And the 49ers are saying what to this, basically? Well, the 49ers go out and draft Ricky Pearsall. They also have Debo. And they
signed Jawan Jennings to an extension.
Yeah, he just got an extension too. So
Christian McCaffrey extension.
They have, where? You know what? I'm going to look up their. Actually, I want to see what their cap space looks like.
And Ayuk is also the very peak of the mountain of who is realistic. That there's a reason why I haven't dove into the CeeDee Lamb not showing up to camp stuff, or like, T. Higgins, because they're not realistic. The crazier things have happened. I like him. If the Steelers got CeeDee Lamb, it'd be the craziest thing since the Chiefs just got rid of Tyreek Hill in like a 3-hour span. I remember being at work and hearing like he might get traded, and then he was. I was like, what just happened? So, but Ayuk is right on that level of like, he's affordable for this team. He's expensive, but he's affordable, but he's the very, very peak. The very top best thing they could get. It's going to cost a lot of money, but that's why he is brought up. He's disgruntled. The Niners need to pay other guys. They have paid other guys. They drafted a receiver in the first round. They extended their receiver 3. They just paid McCaffrey. Kittle's deal is up in like a year and a half. Brock Purdy is going to have to make a big contract. He is consensus top 15. Some people would say top 10 quarterback. He's going to get broken off. And if he's as good as they want to pay him, that's where you sacrifice the receivers. If the quarterback can make and they already kind of showed their hand drafting Pearsall first round and paying Jennings to be their 3. Either Debo or Ayuk. Debo is still a possibility. Quite frankly, I want Ayuk way more, as I've made it obviously abundant. But Debo, I think, could be had for way cheaper. So I'm open to him too. But it might not be us, but I'm pretty confident either Ayuk or Debo is going to be out of San Francisco. It's just a matter of a team ponying up and offering enough. And I heard this from might have been Mike Florio or somebody like that who's well connected in the NFL. And the podcast that was having him on, they were like, Mike, what's something that a lot of fans like don't know? Like, can you give us something short and sweet that'd be like interesting? And he said, you'd be shocked at how many trades are agreed to in the NFL, like per team to team. And then the player and the player's agent are like, no, it's not enough.
Yeah.
So like the hypothetically, the Steelers and the Niners could have agreed to, hey, we'll give you a 4th for Debo. We'll give you this year's 2nd and next year's 3rd for Ayuk. Okay, shake hands. And then Ayuk or Debo and his agent are like, they're going to give me what? No, I'm not going there. And then it just doesn't work out. Apparently that happens frequently. So it's not as easy as just ponying up the draft capital. We have to appease the guy with the right money too. That's why it's taking long, and that's why it's still up in the air, in my opinion, and why I feel like it's still uncertain if we're going to get anybody or not.
Yeah, they have enough. The 49ers have enough bodies to make this trade and still make a run at a Super Bowl. Maybe that's
they're famous
the only reason.
for that.
Maybe
They're the poster team for like, oh, if you just have this, that, and the other, like because of Kyle Shanahan and their line and McCaffrey and their defense, you could put me at quarterback and we'll roll to at least the championship game. So they're famous for that. It's another kind of a lesser important point, but a point nonetheless to be like another reason why Ayuk or Debo may be on the move.
Well, here's the other reason. Obviously, Ayuk's in a contract here, right? And are you going to get something for him before he heads out the door? Samuel still, this contract. These contracts are just, they're mind-numbing to me. Like,
he
just
held
look
out
at
last
this.
year, so he's expensive.
Yeah, 28.6 on the cap. The dead money for the 49ers aren't doing this one because the dead money is 26.4 and 15 for next year, but they will save 9. Now, here's why it's important for San Francisco too. We were just talking about they're kind of all in this year. They might be able to carry some of this money over into next year. They have 32.7 in cap room right now, but we bumped this over to 2025 and they're 37 in the hole. So
exactly.
Yeah.
And look at those guys at the top. They're not going to get rid of. Pull that back up.
Well,
please.
they can't.
They're not going to get rid of Trent Williams, Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, George Kittle, Javon Hargrave. Those are their bread and butter players. Shout out Hargrave. Like, I mean, Ward is going to be up for a deal. Debo, I think they're going to try like hell to get out of Debo's deal. It's just a matter of like how much do they want to bite. And there's McCaffrey.
Yeah, the dead money is insane for all of these players. Trent Williams at 19.1, 15. Well, for these guys,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So 15 for Debo Samuel, Travarius Ward at 12, Nick Bosa at 72, Fred Warner at 28 Kittle at 20. Like all these guys are dead money north of 20 some $20 million. So they're not doing a deal with Ayuk. It's going to be just shut up and play this year. And they already got the replacement there. This guy might even be like pissed off and get passed on the bench for Pearsall.
They hold out.
Do stuff like this. And then all of a sudden now he's out of his job too. And it might be something that comes at the end of camp, but they're not really going to save any money. Ayuk was a fifth-year option. This money was already guaranteed, $14.1 million. So they can't cut him and save any money. The only way this is going away is if you
don't got to pay him next year.
Some team trades for him, yeah, and he's going to be out the door, and you're going to get something for him. And we've made this kind of allusion too. Why does DK Metcalf come up in these conversations? One, he played with Russell Wilson in Seattle. Well, you take a look at what Seattle's got on their depth chart.
I got other reasons too.
Okay.
Whenever you're done for DK.
Well, you look at, so we're going to look at the Seahawks have no cap room right now. They're at $1 million in cap room. Now, Tyler Lockett,
he's the second highest paid player.
Yes,
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, he's got a cap hit at 24.5. His dead money's 28. I'm going to take a look at them individually. I told you Tyler Lockett being he's a little more aged here. He's 32 years old, just flipping right over, and they still got him under contract through next year, but his dead money is about $32.5 million.
Jeez,
they saved nothing.
Bro.
They saved nothing moving from Tyler Lockett. I don't think the Steelers want a soon-to-be 33-year-old wide receiver, whether or not he's played with the quarterback before. Now, DK Metcalf, $28 million, no savings this year. Next year, they would have some sort of savings. And I'm trying to see what kind of a big mess that their cap has next year.
DK, I feel less passionate. What's up?
They're in the whole $18 million already. Now of course the cap will go up. It's estimated that over the cap does here, but that's the reason why they've still got Jackson Smith and Jigba there too.
Exactly.
So they have 3 wide receivers. So you get rid of one of the high-priced Cadillac players here. You get a little bit of breathing room for the rest of your roster. You might get a draft pick or something out of this deal to help further roster build.
A draft pick, exactly.
Bingo.
And it's easy to connect the dots with Russell Wilson and his past targets. That's the reason why Courtland Sutton and DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett are brought up as possibly coming in as trade targets or acquisitions for the Steelers. It's less about that with DK and more of the coaching staff is different. Pete Carroll famously ripped his shirt off and was all excited to draft DK Metcalf. They were tight. He's gone. Russell Wilson gone. Also expensive. And also, like you just said, draft pick. The Seahawks, they aren't dumb. Like Geno Smith, great story. Happy for him. He's at his peak. and he's older. The Seahawks have already acquired Sam Howell because they know they're trying already to prepare for the future that is inevitable, that Geno Smith isn't getting them to the Super Bowl. He's not a franchise quarterback. He's solid. He's good. He's put up good numbers this past year or 2 years. The light is at the end of the tunnel for the Seahawks with their quarterback room. Getting draft capital to prepare for possibly drafting their next franchise quarterback, I'm sure, is important to them. So if the Steelers can offer something that's enticing, like a second-round pick can go a long way with a team trying to get a quarterback, because they could take our second-round pick and just package it with something else to move up the top to get a quarterback. So all of those reasons make DK as likely as he is for me to be a possible trade target. I think he loves Seattle, but it's the nature of the business. And
I love him more in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I love it all comes back to just like the new coaching staff. Carroll's gone. He costs a lot of money. They're going to need a quarterback soon. They drafted Jackson Smith and Jigba in the first. He still got Tyler Lockett. I that's why I think he's on this list here of possible targets. It isn't the deepest list in the world. It's Ayuk, Debo, DK, Lockett, Sutton as trade targets.
Yeah.
And then like like I said, I won't entertain T. Higgins because
no, they're not going to do it within the division.
Interdivision, and CeeDee Lamb would be one of the craziest trades. If the Cowboys, they are dumb, but if they lose CeeDee Lamb or Micah Parsons, they're right back at reset. Those are their two most vital pieces. They need to keep the two of them. I think they know that. So I'm looking at those names, and then break glass in case of emergency. You're looking at Michael Thomas, who they met with like a couple weeks ago and are keeping tabs on. I think that shows you they've told him, hey, we're trying to get somebody here, but if we can't, stay loose.
Yeah, I like, Michael Thomas. Hold on, I'm going to bring him.
I'm open to it. He'll sign for $1 million, so whatever, dude.
Yeah, he's not getting a whole lot of looks because
it's like Allen Robinson.
Issues.
Like, I didn't think Robinson was going to be some star for us, but for trading a seventh and paying him $1.5 million, yeah, I'll take that.
Yeah, 31 years old, just turned 31 in March.
A damn 30 number, dude, that kills wide receivers.
It's 31 and beyond. Like if they have one last good year, other than maybe like Jerry Rice or a few,
it means
others,
you're special. If you're really good into your 30s, you're special.
I mean, Randy Moss. It doesn't mean that they don't play beyond it, but you look at like a Brandon Marshall, Ocho Cinco, like those guys. They still play, but they're not 1,000-yard receivers, 100 catches, anything like that. And Michael Thomas, 39 catches, 448 yards last year in that mess of a Saints offense. He only appeared in 10 games. He only played 3 games the year before. He injured his ankle, I think, preseason or workouts or whatever in 2021. And then he was hurt and only played 7 games in 2020. He is really, 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 really shaky as far as availability. How do you shield someone like that? Well, you got a bunch of other young wide receivers. But I think we're agreeing, like, all the moves that Omar Khan has tried to make, they want to add somebody to this room. Now, who do I say is still the most likely? We talk about teams that have enough wide receivers. They're either in cap room hell or they're in rebuild type mode. Go rewind a second to Courtland Sutton. Okay? I'm going to pull him up for a second.
Sutton makes sense.
Played with Russell Wilson, had success with Russell Wilson. He's got some big cap numbers for the Broncos, and the Broncos are going to have to eat some money. He makes a lot more sense for them next year than this year, but he's still under contract through 2025, 17, 18 million. That's cheaper for a wide receiver as we're talking about how big these contracts have gotten. The cap savings for them this year would be 7.7. He's 14 million cap savings the following year.
Sean Payton didn't draft him.
Sean Payton didn't draft him. He's 29 years old. They've got Tim Patrick. They've got they just drafted Troy Franklin. They also signed
Mims.
Josh. They got Mims. They signed Josh Reynolds. That is a very deep room, and this is a move that, like you said, this cutoff ends up. You got a guy at age 29 and 30. And you pay him over the next 2 years, you add him to this room, you find out who Roman Wilson and Kelvin Austin are, you still have George Pickens, then you're able to re-sign George Pickens and say Levy to Courtland Sutton after that, because number one thing we did not mention here, we talked about all the guys that need signed and all the guys that need paid, et cetera, with that close to $80 million, maybe Cam Hayward, maybe Pat Freiermuth, maybe Najee Harris, maybe they move on. Who the hell's the quarterback going to be, and what are you paying him next year? You're not going to get Russell Wilson on a vet min next year. Russell Wilson's going to be like, hey, I need to be up here with these guys making $40 million or so. And Omar Khan being the guy that the guru he is and everything else. Hey, did we have success? Did he not have success? Or maybe he's completely out the door and they got to go seeking someone else. But at least if it's somebody else, you have like a veteran like Courtland Sutton, you have George Pickens that's still there to build for whoever the next quarterback is, either this quarterback or for the future. You have all of these skill position players, hopefully, that you surround that quarterback with. But I think Courtland Sutton makes the most sense.
That's the main factor that is giving me any type of hesitation or pause, is the quarterback of the future situation, which relates back to my point. It's all on the Steelers and how they view this roster. Can they compete for a championship this year if they think they get that next offensive piece, the final piece to the puzzle? I'm willing to make that sacrifice, but I'm not in the office. So, and I also think Justin Fields, as mentioned, will be re-signed for not a lot of money, so he may be the starter next year. Russell Wilson, I've put it like this with him: if he plays good enough to warrant a big deal, that's great for the Steelers. I mean, we had a great year, so we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But Sutton does make a lot of sense. It'd be very typical for us to get Sutton after I've been so excited over Ayuk and DK. Although Sutton has been in my top 4 this whole time, I think he's a good player and has a lot of good ball left. But he seems to be the name that, even we all know the begrudged Pittsburgh media and people who don't want to entertain any of this fan fiction or, oh, you don't know anything, the Steelers never do this, they never do that. Courtland Sutton's the one name that even those people are like, yeah, he'd make a lot of sense. So I could definitely see a reality where we get Courtland Sutton especially because Sutton, similar to Ayuk and CeeDee Lamb, he's holding out right now too. So you'd have to trade. Yeah.
I like his contract right now compared to everyone else, because Ayuk, you're going to have to make him up there. Justin Jefferson's got $35 million. Every next guy wants to be up in that stratosphere. Courtland Sutton's like, hey, I had a contract like Tyreek Hill. Now I want more money.
Yeah. Bad time for him to have a great year last year. It wasn't like an all pro kind of year, but he definitely had a good second season with Russell Wilson. He's battled injury, started his career, but he had some highlight catches last year and played well with him. So,
10 TDs.
Of course it goes like that. CeeDee Lamb also had a year of his life last year. So, funny how that works with contract years.
Yeah, hey, 10 touchdowns for Courtland Sutton. I think he'd be higher on my wish list if he would play on this existing contract. If he just wants a little smidge of extra more money, this is stuff where a lot of that, as I said, with the dead cap hits, those signing bonuses are already being paid by the Denver Broncos. So if you can get something out of that, it'd be a lot different than Ayuk, who you're going to be paying out of your own pocket, than getting somebody that isn't like a DK Metcalf or a Courtland Sutton or even Deebo Samuel. But man,
have the Broncos pay for our quarterback and our wide receiver too? That's so funny.
Exactly one of the reasons why they might not. So I got a bonus one for you. I didn't put this on it intentionally. I'm so sick of hearing about this. Does Juju return? He's not available. Now, you got a new coaching staff, you got everybody else that's out there saying, would you bring Juju back? Yeah, but he's under contract now for 2 more seasons. And you take a look at this deal that he currently has with the New England Patriots. Name another wide receiver over on that team, by the way. I bet you can't. I'm not going to say bet you can't. It's just a hypothetical. But here you go. He's got a cap number of $10 million over the next 2 years, which everything else that we just said isn't too terrible. He's been in the league forever, and he's still only 28 years old. But what are you getting with Juju? Like you mentioned, Courtland Sutton, it's a wide receiver 1. DK Metcalf, wide receiver 1. Ayuk, wide receiver 1 potential. And that offense, everybody could be a wide receiver 1, right? With the 49ers. Becomes a Pittsburgh wide receiver 1. Or very 1A, B.
1A, 1B,
with George Pickens. Juju, I think, is firmly like the guy that's wide receiver 2, physical blocker. It's all the things that you want, but he's probably going to be operating out of the slot. He may even be relegated to wide receiver 3 type duty. And he's been in purgatory with the quarterback hell that the New England Patriots have had for the last, Mac Jones, Bailey Zappi, all of those guys. The Patriots aren't exactly rich there either. They got Jalen Polk this year, Kendrick Bourne, Demario Douglas, KJ Osborne, Javon Baker.
Baker's going to be good, I think.
Baker.
I liked him.
Jalen Reagor signed there too. They've got a bunch of just bodies, kind of like the Steelers do. And when you're paying a bunch of bodies, one of them Juju $10 million, there might be smoke around the fire that he gets released and then he gets added back to the Steelers on a song and add some veteran
Cam Sutton reunion.
depth. Yeah, exactly like that. I wouldn't say no, but don't count it out just yet unless this guy's buried deep on the depth chart with Gerard Mayo, Alex Van Pelt's offense, et cetera, et cetera. I wouldn't call it a lock. You know what I mean? But it's kind of like you said, break glass in case of emergency. You might keep monitoring this situation through the summer. And then if the guy becomes available, the Steelers aren't going to trade anything for Juju Smith-Schuster. They're just going to wait for him to be cut. The Patriots will eat a little bit of cap space, and then they save $7.5 million for next year. There it is. A great photo, by the way.
Thanks. It was a gift. That's his Dragon Ball Z celebration against the Ravens as a rookie. You hit on all the points that I would highlight myself. Yeah, I take him back. I have a jersey in every color, and I was a self-proclaimed Juju B, one of the head Juju Bs. I always thought he got a bad rap. I resonate with the kids in social media, dancing, having a fun time. Yeah, he shouldn't have danced on the look. He definitely pushed the issue a couple of times, but I've seen way worse in the NFL, and I always liked him, always rooted for him. I think he would be, considering who we have in the room, a fine addition. We could take him on. Steelers like reunions, but I don't know how likely it is because I can say all the nice things I want to about Juju, but I'm with you. You said you're so sick of hearing about this. I am, because it's just another topic that every day you pull up Twitter, every day you talk to your Yinzer uncle, and it's, I can't believe Juju this, Juju that.
They didn't like him when he was here.
I
now
was
you
sad
want
to
him
see
back?
him. Exactly.
Yeah.
I was sad to see him go, but it was a relief at the same time to stop arguing about him, kind of like Kenny Pickett. But the Juju stuff, I still think he's a good enough player, and he would carve out a role in our receiver room, probably play a lot. But yeah, I wouldn't want to trade for him with what the Patriots broke him off for necessarily, because they gave him a decent enough contract that I know their fan base, Juju, there were quarterback problems, but they gave him the deal that Jacoby Myers, their former receiver, got from the Raiders. And a lot of them just wish they would have kept Jacoby Myers instead of paying Juju. So I take that pretty seriously, that his own fan base currently was like, damn, we should have just kept Jacoby Myers. But in short, yes, I would take him back. However, I know that would come with arguments and people complaining and people, it would be a headache. But given the state of our wide receiver room, I would take him back.
I think there'll be a lot of open arms welcome for him. So a little bit of bonus.
He's a good kid. He's a good dude. He's a good kid.
Yeah, he's never really caused any major. Come on now. Do you see Antonio Brown? That's like everything that's going on. Like that guy's.
There's so many examples, dude, of like receivers, like in particular. But yeah, there's so many examples of worse shit that we've tolerated over the years that Juju just struck a chord with people with the TikToks and the dancing. And yeah, he shouldn't have done it before games on their logos. That is the one thing that I'll be like, you're right. He shouldn't have done that. But I'm not going to just hold that one or two incidents against him as a like attack on his character or who he is. Juju was one of the most popular Steelers I'd ever seen his first like 2 years. And then it just all like, it blew up. So I think he can still play, and yeah, I would take him back, just again because of where we're at right now with the receivers.
Yep, I'm with you too. So I'm looking at this too. He has a per game roster bonus, I think $1 million. I don't profess to see or talk about how much this ends up tallying, but just if that is the case and he can make even more money, then I just see the Patriots just walking away from that. And Omar Khan and these guys, they know everybody else's business that's out there. All these teams do. That's called being, a good steward. That's why you are the general manager. They knew like Joe Hayden was ready to be bounced from Cleveland years ago, and they had the money and they had the ammo and they were ready to pounce and take advantage of it. So if they don't add another body right away, I say don't panic. That's why I could see them standing pat at least through even training camp. And then somebody like Juju.
Standing pat.
Yeah, standing pat.
Pat.
That might be one reason. Maybe they don't.
I do want him to do better, dude. Tight end and safety are two spots that like, I thought about this on my way home. Tight end and safety are two spots that after we lost Troy Polamalu and after we lost Heath Miller, felt like every year it was like, who are we going to get for safety? Who are we going to get for tight end? I wrote an article for Steel City Underground back when I used to write about why Wesley Sanders should be given a second chance.
Dude, Wes. Why not
I sold
Wes?
myself. Why not Wes? I sold myself on Xavier Grimble. Like I was starved for us to get a good tight end again. And when we got Freiermuth, I was very happy. He's performed up to his draft capital, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he's better than what we've had since Heath Miller. And Minka fixed the Troy problem, so I haven't had to deal with that. But I want him to be good, and he is good. I want him to flourish because tight end and safety are two spots that for the better part of like 5 years, we were just in no man's land playing a bunch of, Jesse James this, Jesse James that. But like there was never anybody close to what we have now with Minka and Pat since Troy and Heath. So I want him to do well. That's why I'm wearing the shirt. I want him to do well. I already said this, but I think if you can add a better receiver, why not?
Yeah. Just how desperate are they? I mean, it sounds like they're working on it, but
they're watching in camp, I think, too.
That desperate. You know what I mean? Like if they were super desperate, they would have already pulled that trigger. So I think
which is probably good that they haven't. It's probably good that they haven't. And I think they're evaluating the guys in camp. They're watching guys right now. Like they're trying to decipher, is this good enough? Should we roll with this? Might need to wait till the pads come on to really understand that. And with pads comes injuries. I would never wish injuries on a Steeler player or any player, but that's something that if somebody goes down, all of a sudden the need becomes that much more glaring.
Look at what the 49ers did, and what they had Jimmy Garoppolo just sitting at home, and they're ready to roll. What, Trey Lance? And they're just he gets hurt, and Garoppolo, hey, they call him back up on the phone. Come on down, it's your turn again. They're ready to pay him to just sit on the couch. He didn't even come to camp, and they could very well do that again with one of these other guys that are like the wide receivers or whatever. But we're up against it, my friend. That last chunk with all the potential targets and whatnot, and it just. I mean, to talk about all of these different potential targets, I mean, we didn't talk a lot about the guys that are already there because there's just that much unknown about everyone other than George Pickens. That's why we're talking about all of these other guys. That's why we've seen the hints that Omar Khan's going to make a deal. And it could be somebody we didn't even talk about and be surprised, but who makes that big of a splash other than the guys we already talked about? Not many wide receivers are left in that case. So
I do think Roman Wilson's going to be good. He was one of the guys I wanted. I was excited we picked him. He's wearing number 10. Love that. But it's a lot to ask of a guy to come in as a third-round pick and be like, okay, you're the 2. Good luck. It's been done. We've seen it before. Guys can pull it off, but it's a lot to put on his shoulders. Is okay, you're the 2. And he's got the right mindset. Very fast, good blocker. Good. He's a good receiver. Probably should have been a higher draft pick, but I don't think it's fair to expect him to come in and just be the 2 as a third-round pick.
Tomlin doesn't do that stuff. He's been a little more quicker to pull the trigger, but when the guy isn't ready, he doesn't throw like just James Washington out there. He just doesn't throw Sammy Coates out there.
Juju even waited a week. Juju was on the field by week 3 a lot, but still though.
Yeah, Juju was sprinkled in, and there were other, AB
then he took
was still
over.
there. Pickens
he proved
was
himself.
in.
Juju proved himself with his early opportunities.
But Bryant had to wait till like week 7 for Martavis.
Week 6 or 7, yeah. Yep. First catch was a touchdown.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we knew it. If you watched the preseason, you knew it. But anyways, Dak, thanks for returning. Thanks for coming back and talking receivers. We'll have to have you on again soon, hopefully.
Can't wait. As soon as we get Brandon Ayuk, I'll be here.
He'll be. Yeah, my phone will be blowing up if that happens.
There'll be a silhouette of me through this wall like Wile E. Coyote when a bomb goes off.
Like the Kool-Aid man breaking through. So,
yeah.
Folks, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for watching or listening wherever you may be. Till next time. Yeah, don't forget to follow us all over the place. My name's Joe Kuzma. His name's Zach Celedonia. Till next time, we encourage everyone out there to be safe, be good, and we'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.